Comes from the Hebrew scriptures, Isaiah, the second chapter, verses 1 through 5, using the New Revised Standard Version. Hear these words of God. The word that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many peoples shall come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall attribute for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. O house of Jacob, come and let us walk in the light of the Lord." Times of hope. Now, I've got to take just a little side path right now because Kathy asked me how I was doing this morning, and I looked at her and I said, I've had better. I'm going to tell you part of it is I am trying to go without caffeine today. That is really a struggle for me. Kathy's shaking her head, she knows. I don't know why. I just woke up with this brilliant idea that today was the day to start a healthier life choice. So pray with me and for me that you feel more energy than I feel. God sometimes uses opportunities or what seem like just innocent questions to help us feel a hope that we did not normally feel. When I thought about this time of year, when I read the different passages that our Western context of Christianity lifts up, because you understand that we are not the only Christians in the world, and that the way that those of us who are the spiritual and historical descendants of European Christianity look at things is not the only way that Christians look at things. There's a whole nother part of the world that are Christians who see things a little differently and have different calendars. And one of the calendars that we have is called a liturgical calendar from our Western perspective. And on that calendar, it lifted up several verses that would be in keeping with the theme of Advent for today. So I just chose Isaiah because something about it seemed to speak to me, and I hope it speaks to you as well. But then I started reading in other places from other commentators and other people who were writing about how we should speak of this day, and they also chose Isaiah. For some reason, they thought that this world, our world, especially the people I was reading, were from the United States, that we in this country needed a little hope. Now, do you know anybody around here who needs a little hope, just a little bit of hope? And yet they thought that Isaiah could share that word of hope for us, to remind us that these are times of hope, just like they were times of hope in the time in which Mary was preparing to bear Jesus, and Joseph was leaning into what it would mean to be an earthly father in a very, very complicated relationship. So anybody that tells you that they have a complicated relationship, tell them that's not new. That's been around for centuries. But in the midst of those complications, God has a word of hope for us today in the midst of our complicated trying times. When I turned on the television and scanned the different news shows early today, most of the talking heads were saying the same thing. It was a lot of blah, 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 pretty negative, very hopeless, and pretty cynical, if you would. When I scanned my news feed and the different subscriptions that I subscribe to for information, most of them were talking about war here and drought there, political instability here and impeachment there. Most of them, it was just negative. How could anybody think that these are times of hope? But yet, Isaiah invites us to do just that. In this time, and especially on this day, Advent, the first day of a season of anticipation and preparation. Someone asked me what my sub-theme was for today, and I said, it's the difference between waiting and preparing. Because, sometimes we know something is going to happen. Something big is going to transpire in our lives, maybe in our church or in our family or at our job. And we're just waiting for that, whatever that is, to happen. We don't do anything. We're just kind of waiting there and dreading it and just saying, oh, Lord, whatever it is, let's just hurry up and get it over with. But when we take a different posture, and I believe that is the posture that the prophet Isaiah invites us to embrace this morning, which is one of preparation, one where things are going to happen. So what are we doing to get ready for it? How are we getting our spirits ready to receive the joy of Jesus once again? How are we preparing our personal lives to be in a place where we can be assets and blessings to the world? How are we preparing our church to not only look beautiful, and it does look beautiful. I should have thanked them earlier, but all the people that showed up for the hanging of the Greensley and for Lee's leadership and Randy Nash and Gina and everybody just jumping in there, it looks beautiful. But that's part of the preparation for this season of the year. It's not the main event. In my own family, we are in a season of preparing, not waiting, preparing for a future grandchild in addition to her family. And we are all excited. And you ought to see my wife going around getting these diaper boxes and getting her sisters and cousins and everybody, we're going to give my daughter-in-law a diaper shower because she still got clothes from the last one. So, the next child, the younger children don't need new clothes. You can just get the hand-me-downs from your siblings. But the you don't agree with that one? The diapers that my wife is gathering for my future grandchild, they remind us that we are preparing for her entry into this world and that we're not just waiting. We are preparing. This is a season of preparation. Now, some would say, when you prepare, what is the difference for those of us who call ourselves Christ followers and Jesus followers than maybe someone who is not? Well, in our context, we are being invited to prepare with a sense of affirmation, with a thank you not only for ourselves, but giving words of comfort, giving words of hope, giving words of support to others through affirmations. Now, some people have said, why do we need to give people affirmations? They should just already have hope. But we know that's not the case. So some have written that hope is essential to the human state of being. Hope is essential. Author Drake Bear writes, humans seek after hope like moths seek after light. It's intrinsic to who we are. Neuroscientist Tal Sharot argues hope is so essential to our survival that it is hardwired into our brains. arguing it can be the difference between living a healthier life and one trapped by despair. The difference between living a healthier life and one trapped by despair. Now, when I think about hope, I'm reminded by some other authors that hopeful athletes perform better on the field. Alabama must have been without hope last night. Cope better with injuries and have greater mental adjustment when situations change. Have you thought about that in your own lives, that you have a better ability to adjust and to be flexible when you approach things from a hopeful perspective? Now, also, another study went on to say that elderly, those who say they felt hopeless in a study, were more than twice as likely to die during the time of the follow-up to that study period than those who were more hopeful. So there must be something tied to this hope thing, that it's not just, quote, a mental state or a physical or a emotional state of being, but it actually affects our physical realities. That as the mind goes, so does the body. Or some would say, as the body goes, so does the mind. Who knows what comes first? They are bound to one another. I like that idea. Hope can give us a longer lifespan, or can give us a better way of living with whatever lifespan we have, in a state of grace and joy and hope. Isaiah 2, verses 1 through 5 are full of symbols of hope, symbols and words and phrases like this. They shall beat their swords into plowshares. They shall turn their spears into pruning hooks, which is an agricultural device for us people who might not have grown up in an agricultural setting. They shall learn war no more. Let us walk in the light of the Lord. Now that last verse there, it seemed like it started a whole nother passage, but that last verse, for those of us who live in the northern hemisphere, especially this time of year, when there are more days like the one out there right now where it's just dreary and cloudy than there are sunny and bright days this time of year, that last verse, that we shall walk in the light of the Lord, takes on a huge meaning, I believe, as we seek to not only, quote, live into these times of hope, but create times of hope. That as we live in the light of God, we will be like those throngs of people who streamed up that mountain that Isaiah dreamed of to come to God's temple. People from every nation, people from every perspective, people of different economic backgrounds, people with military and political agendas different from one another. All of those people approaching the throne of God. How marvelous would that be? How awesome would that be? It has not happened yet. But we still live in hope, anticipation, and preparation. Again, when I think about affirmations that can inspire this type of hope, I'm reminded that many sources say that affirmations can be processes of positive affirming of oneself, activities, or state of being. But on the contrary, the lack of affirmation can leave one emotionally crippled. Have you ever met anyone that you thought was emotionally crippled, unable to live into the full range of emotions? Some of those emotions, yes, are negative or difficult, but when one experiences the full range, from the struggles to the joy, then one can embrace the hope of the times. And so affirmations can help create a positive state of being in one or a group of people. Affirmations. God blesses us in the midst of those affirmations. God blesses the church to be a blessing to all peoples. When I think about how this church has blessed people, a couple pictures popped in my mind, pictures that were able to be shared with me. In these pictures, we see our church, and look, there she is. You know, somebody tell Jody Meyer she looked really good next to that bunny. Whoever that bunny was, we want to thank them both because they remind us of how we are called to give joy in this community to many. And then in another picture, we see persons gathering to share God's hope with runners going by, doing the St. Jude run to raise funds for St. Jude Foundation. And yeah, those signs are, they might not do a lot, but they do represent hope. And then we see another picture where people are actually able to come together here in worship and hear hope coming from our worship leaders and are inspired by them and rejuvenated. And I dare say, like me this morning, I was touched. Thank all of you because you help us to feel the hope. It's important that we feel inspired, that we feel affirmed, because when you go back out into the world, that's the last thing you experience. It was the same during the time of Mary and Joseph. They struggled, and they too had to deal with the negative people, with the naysayers, with the gossips, and with people saying this and that about them. But yet, they were the physical bearers of God's Son being born into this world. And so I remind you as we go forth today that we live in those times of hope, not just because they are, but because we are. God continues to work through us and in us so that the world could know hope. Amen.